Here comes Susie Sausage Head.
So, let me tell y'all about the time Susie Sausagehead was watching a movie in her apartment one day. It was her day off and she was enjoying some time home alone watching a horror movie with some flour and libations. The movie was a typical creature feature, complete with all of the screaming and jump scares that you would expect, just the way she liked it. Susie was getting to the midpoint of the movie and wanted to take a restroom break before the final act began. With this in mind, Susie paused the movie, got up, and went to the restroom. Susie Sausagehead was completing her restroom business when she heard a scream. It was very loud and sounded as though the person making it was in agony. Susie immediately wondered if she remembered to pause the movie before going to the restroom. After all, she was riding a serious libation and flower wave and could have easily forgotten. She was still wondering this as she heard another scream issue from the distance. Susie jumped a little while drying her hands, mentally fumbling with the realization that was just outside of her grasp. As she exited the restroom, it came to her. If these screams were coming from her television, where was the accompanying soundtrack and dialogue? There was none of that, only screaming. And just then, another one was heard. Susie Sausagehead exited her restroom and was instantly in detective mode. Solving mysteries was her favorite pastime, and right now, in this moment, there was a case that needed to be investigated. She followed the sound of yet another scream that was answered this time by a dog. Barking? Oh well, now this was getting interesting. The dog followed the first shocked, high-pitched bark with two lower tenored barks and a growl. Susie tried to imagine the scene unfolding behind the sound she was hearing, but at this, her imagination failed her, probably due to the libations and the flour. She decided the best place to start looking was outside on her patio, which was located to the rear of her unit and overlooked a courtyard complete with a dog park, barbecue gazebo, and a children's playground. Susie Sausagehead pulled back the vertical blinds that covered her sliding glass door and was immediately met with quite the scene. As she looked down, the first thought Susie had was, "Oh my goodness." Below her, she could see a woman fighting to control a small dog who was actively biting and hanging on to a small child's pants leg. The child was screaming while kicking the leg that the dog had, and the woman was pulling on a leash and calling the dog's name. Susie noticed two other children walking away from the playground equipment and toward their stricken friend, while a man advanced from the woman's behind holding a leash. The kids were now all screaming, "Get off the dog!" And the man was moving to pick up the dog and hopefully separate muzzle from denim. Susie's eyes were drawn to movement from the corner of her eye and glanced to see more of her neighbors emerging on their patios. At first, they were all quiet and, like her, observing the situation that was unfolding below. That was until another woman began yelling something about getting that dog off of her child. Susie didn't have time to see who it was because by the time she turned her head in the direction of the voice, all she saw was waving blinds in front of a sliding glass door. She, however, would not have to wait long before finding out who the owner of the voice was. From around the corner of the building to the right, Susie Sausagehead saw a woman moving faster than she would have expected her to, toward the child/dog conflict. When she arrived, any measures to be genteel with the dog went away. The woman rose her leg and stomped on the dog's head. She did this repeatedly while the man was still trying to pick the dog up, and as a consequence, he too received a few stomps. The woman holding the leash started yelling in a different key and began windmilling the stomping woman. Meanwhile, the two children that weren't being used as chew toys had found some sticks, 3 to be exact, and nice-sized ones too. They had given one to their fallen comrade, then all 3 of them went to work on the dog and owners, poking and beating both dog and human with the sticks. Susie could see that the dog still had a firm grip on the pants leg and was planning on keeping it. All of a sudden, Susie heard a cheer and looked across the courtyard to find her neighbors had gotten libations and chairs. Hoots and calls were now flying across the courtyard proclaiming favorites and odds. No one was off limits. Names like Leash Lady, Stomper, The Dude, Chew Toy, Girl with a Stick, Boy with a Stick, and The Dog were shouted, accompanied with predictions of the outcome. Susie Sausagehead was still enthralled by the chaos unfolding below her when she took another glance around at her neighbors and found that several of them were holding personal mobile devices. First, she wondered if they were all calling the authorities. It was probably for the best if they were. That was until she saw them pointing their devices down and toward the chaos in the courtyard. She realized that they were recording and were probably live on some social media site getting their clout up. She then wondered why she wasn't holding her device. With this thought in mind, Susie turned and ran to grab her device. Once in hand, she used her finger to unlock it, punched the camera icon, and tapped the video button. She did all this while rushing back to her patio, navigating her furniture from a space of subconscious muscle memory alone. She could still hear the yelling, screaming, crying, growling, and cheering outside and didn't want to miss a moment of that action. As soon as Susie climbed back out onto her patio and pressed the record button on her device screen, she could hear sirens in the distance. Guess somebody called the authorities after all. The end.